Hi, hello, welcome to Sudoku Pro channel. Let's solve Sudoku puzzle in today's Hindu. Let's get started now. Let me share with you the tips and techniques I adopted to solve today's puzzle. To start with, I want to explain about three complementary pairs in today's puzzle. Please observe this 4848 pair here. Please observe this 4848 pair here, and similarly you have a 48 pair here and this 48 pair. So now this 48 pair blocks these cells. That means we cannot have any 4 or 8 here. This 48 pair blocks this cell and this 48 block these cells. So we have only these two cells left over where a 48 can come. So this means that this cell can take a 4 or 8. Similarly, this cell can take a 4 or 8. We call these two pairs as complementing pairs. Complementing pairs means if a 4 comes here, this cell takes 8. If this cell becomes 8, becomes 4, this cell takes 8. So that's what we call as complementary pair. And that also means that when there is a complementary pair, no other cells in the block can take this number 4, 8. Okay. Now you see a 4 here. That means this 4 blocks, this 4 doesn't allow a 4 to be here. So let's erase 4 here. This cell takes 8. That means this 8 has to be erased. So we have a 8 and 4 here. Let me write it properly. Now let's scan through the numbers across the rows and columns and find out more numbers. Now let's take this 4. This 4 blocks this cell and we have 4 here which blocks these cells, and we have a 4 here which blocks these cells. So these cells are blocked, these cells are blocked. So we have an empty cell here which can take a 4. Now this 4 blocks these cells, this 4 blocks these cells, and we have a 4 which blocks here. So here we get a 4. Now coming down, this 4 blocks these 3 cells, and we have this 4 blocking this cell, and this 4 blocks here. So this cell takes a 4. Now all the blocks have 4. Now let's move on to the next number, that is 5. There is a 5 here and a 5 here. So this 5 blocks these 3 cells. This 5 blocks this cell, and we have a 5 here which blocks here. That means this cell takes a 5. Now this 5 blocks these cells and this 5 blocks here. That means this 5 has to come in one of these 3 cells. We don't have any other 5 in this vertical columns to cross check. So let's leave this. Similarly, in this section also, you have a 5 blocking this cell. You have 5 blocking here, but we don't have any other 5 to check which cell will take 5. So let's leave this also. Let's move on to the next number, which is 6. Okay, this 6, let's take this 6. This blocks this cell. This 6 blocks this cell. We have 2 empty cells which can take a 6. Um, Friends, here you can just mark this with a small 6. This will help us in finding out. Let us mark 6 here because these 2 cells has the possibility to take 6. Now, moving on. Here if you see, this 6 blocks this cell and this 6 blocks this cell. That means there is a 6 here. Now interestingly, this 6, you have to check the impact of this 6. This 6 impacts here. That means this cell cannot have a 6. So let's erase that. So this cell will take a 6. Let me write that properly. This cell takes a big 6. Now this 6 blocks these cells. This 6 blocks these cells. And we have a 6 here which blocks here. That means these 2 cells can take a 6. Similarly, we can have a small marking here. And once again, this 6 blocks here and this 6 blocks here. And we have a 6 here. That means these 2 empty cells can take a 6. So we are going to mark it here. Okay, now let's move on to the next number, which is 7. We have only 2 7 in this puzzle. Yeah, 7 here. This is not helping much. And this 7 uh, blocks this cell. That means this cell can take a 7. Let's move on to the next number, which is 8. Now consider this 8. This 8 blocks this cell, and we have 8 down here which blocks this cell, and we have 8 here which blocks here. That means this cell can take a 8. And this 8 blocks here. This 8 blocks this cell, and we have 8 here down here, 1 8, and here 1 8. So automatically we get a 8 here. Now all the blocks have 8. Let's move on to the next number, which is 9. So 9, if you take, we have 2 9s in this section. So this 9 blocks here, this 9 blocks here. So automatically we get a 9 here. So if you move on here, this 9 blocks here, this 9 blocks this cells, this 9 blocks this cell. So these 2 cells can take a 9. Let's mark it. Moving down, this 9 blocks here, and we don't have any other 9 in this row, right? So these two empty cells can take 9. So let's mark it. Now there is an interesting observation here. This 9 blocks this entire row, right? Uh, when we have 2 9 marked here, that means that this entire cells are blocked. They cannot have 9. That means these two empty cells can take a 9. Let's mark it. Fine. Now let's move on. Since I started with 4, we have not cross-checked numbers 3, 2 and 1. The reason is there is no much help because there is only 1, 2, there is only 1, 1. It's not going to help much. Even 3, if you take, you have only 1, 3 here up, and here you have 1, 3. So if you see, this 3 blocks this cell and this 3 blocks this cell. These two cells can have a 3. So let's mark it. Now if you come down, that you have a 3 here and a 3 here, so this cell is blocked. Now you can have 3 in these two cells. Now this is very interesting observation, friends. You have two cells and you have a pair of numbers. You can have 3 and 9 in these two cells. These two cells are again making a complementary pair. Now that is a great help for us to solve this block, because when we have 3 9 3 9 complementary pair here, that means that no other cells in this block can take 3 or 9. That means we have only one cell left, and the leftover number is 1. From 1 to 9, the leftover number is 1 here. So let's fill this with 1. Now we have completed step number 1, that is scanning through the numbers starting from 1 to 9. The next step is looking for blocks or rows or columns where there are only 1 or 2 empty cells. Now you take this row. In this row, there are only 2 empty cells, right? No, sorry, in this block. In this block, you have only 2 empty cells. So the missing numbers are 1, 2, right? The missing numbers are 1, 2. That means these two empty cells will take 1 or 2. Since we don't have any other clue from the other blocks, we have to just mark it with 1 and 2. So this can take 1, 2. Again, this is making a complementary pair. Now looking through this row, all the cells are filled except this cell. Now clearly this cell can take 3 or 9, because you have a cell which has a pair 3 9. That means this cell will also take a complementary pair 3 9. So let's fill it with 3 9. This means this row is almost complete now. This row is almost complete now. Consider this column. There are only 2 empty cells. So the leftover numbers are 1, 2 and 9. So 2 and 9. We don't have any clues, so we'll just mark the two cells with the complementary pair 2 9. Now friends, you would have noticed that I have missed out 5 here, right? See 5, this 5 blocks this cell, and we have a 5 blocking this cell. So we have an empty cell where 5 can take. So this we have missed out in the initial scanning. Now that makes this column left over with the 3 empty cells. Now let's see what are the numbers missing here. You have 1 missing, 2 is not there, 3 is here, 4, 5, 6, 7 is not there, right? Okay, so we have 3 empty cells and 3 numbers missing. Now we have a 1 here, so that means this cell cannot take 1, and this will take 2 and 7. Here the other 2 cells do not have any clues, so I am straight away writing all the 3 numbers just for our reference. Okay, so like how we had a complementary pair, this we call as a triplet. That means 3 cells has 3 numbers. That means 1, 2 and 7 can only come in one of these 3 cells. No other cells in this block can take a 1 or 2 or 7. So that obviously tells us this cell cannot take a 2. So this cancels out the 2 here, and this will take only a 9. Now this 9 impacts here. This cell cannot take a 9. This cancels out the 9 here, and this cell takes a 2. That shows that this cell takes a 9. No. Yeah, let's now erase everything properly and write it. This becomes a 2. This becomes a big 9. Fine. Now in this block we have only one empty cell here. The missing out number is obviously 3. So let us fill this with 3. Now if you check this column, we have only 2 leftover numbers. Two leftover numbers. The numbers are 1 and 7. Friends, you can see here is a 7. So automatically this takes 1 and this takes a 7. Okay. Fine. Let's now consider this column. In this column, there are only 2 empty cells here and here. So leftover numbers are 1 and 2, right? So if you consider this cell, there is a 2 here. So this automatically obviously takes a 1. So this cell takes a 2. Now let's see the impact of 1. This 1 blocks this cell. This 1 blocks this cell. So this cell takes a 1. Now this cell blocks here, this one blocks here, this one blocks here, and this one blocks here. So obviously this cell takes 1. So once we got this 1 here, now there is only one missing number in here, that is 2. So 2 is done. Now this 2 impacts this cell. Now this obviously takes 1. So let's erase, and now let's take 1 here. That means this cell takes a 2. This cell becomes a 2. Now we have only 2 numbers missing here. The missing numbers are we have 1, 2, 3. 2 and 3 are missing. So 2 and 3 has to come in this cell or this cell. Since here we have a 2, this cell takes a 3. So this cell takes a 3, and obviously this cell takes 2. In this block we have 2 cells missing. The missing numbers are, we have 1, 2, 3 is missing, 5 is missing. You can see this 3 here, 3, so that 3 cancels out the 3 here, so obviously we get a 5 here. This becomes a 5. So this becomes a 3. So that leaves only one number here. The missing number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fine. So now the top section is done. Let's move down here. So here we have missed out this. We have a 3 blocking here, and we have a 3 blocking this cell. So this empty cell takes a 3. Now the two missing numbers here are, quickly, it is 1 and 7. Okay, so let's mark it. This becomes a complementary pair. In this row only one cell is missing. The missing number, actually, since we have a complementary pair 2, 7 here, we have a 2, 7 here, obviously this becomes a complementary pair 2, 7. So as of now, let's mark it as 2, 7. Now here this we have to find, we can find this missing cell, missing number here. See, since we have a 1, 7, we have a 1, 2, 7 here. 1, 2, 7 here. So obviously this cell has to take a 1, 7, 1 or 2 or 7 only. since we have a 1 here, this can become a 2 7, and since we have a 2 here, so obviously we have 1 and 2, so obviously this becomes a 7. So that makes this 1. That makes this 7. And this becomes a 2. There are only 2 numbers left in this column. The numbers are 2, 3, 4, 5 and sorry, 5 is there. The missing numbers are 7 and 9. You can see a 7 here, so 7 cannot come here. This cell takes 9. And this cell takes a 7. Now, since there is a 7 and 2 here, automatically we can crack down this. Here 7 and 2 cancels out and this becomes a 1. And this 1 and 7 cancels out and this becomes a 2. And this automatically becomes a 7. So in this section we have only these 2 cells missing. The missing numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So let's just mark it down here. Now there is an observation here. We have a 3, so that cancels out the 3 here and this becomes a 9. So this becomes a 3. So now this becomes a 9. So now there are 2 cells missing here, which is actually 1, 2, 3 and 6. Since you have a 3 here, this obviously takes a 6. And this becomes a 3. Since this becomes a 6, this obviously becomes 5. And this cell takes 6. Now these are the only 2 cells missing now. The missing numbers are 1, 2 and 5. 2 and 5. So here we have a 2. So this takes 5. And this takes a 2. Wow, we have solved this puzzle. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you.